My name is Nathen Harvey. I'm going to walk us through this next talk for tonight's DevOps DC meetup group. This is compliance automation with InSpec, and this is actually going to be a hands-on activity. You're welcome to participate with the hands-on yourself. I'd highly encourage you to do so. I have both Jessica DeVita and Rob Kidd available to help with any questions that come up as we go through this. You're also, of course, welcome to just watch as we go through this. I will be doing each and every one of the labs live, so you can follow along there as well. Right. So, of course, if you're just joining or just tuning in, please do come over to dctechslack.com, sign up for that Slack team, and then join us in the DevOps DC meetup channel. And once you're in that Slack team, please reach out to Rob Kidd or Jessica DeVita, that's at Rob Kidd or at UberGeekGirl in that Slack channel, and ask for a node name and IP address. Please do that via a direct message to them in the Slack team. And then, yeah, it's the Slack team that you just joined if you follow along with these slides. Again, that will give you the opportunity to do the labs right along with me as we go through this. Okay, wow, so we're going to jump right in. Hopefully you've had a chance to ask Rob or Jessica for an IP address. I'm going to pause just for 30 seconds or so to make sure that they are able to answer anyone who's asking for one, so that we can go ahead and make sure that everybody who wants to participate in the labs has an IP address and is ready to go. And once you have that, we're going to ask that you SSH into that remote machine. And so what we're going to do throughout this exercise or throughout this presentation here is we're actually going to look at compliance as code using InSpec on these particular workstations. And I'm going to walk you through sort of a whole workflow on how do we check whether or not these machines are in compliance, how do we remediate them if they're not in compliance, and so forth. And we'll look at that through Chef Automate and through InSpec, the open source language for compliance automation. And I am going to wait until either Jessica or Rob, if you could just reach out to me and say, yo, we're good to go, thumbs up. And everyone who's asked has an IP address. And in the meantime, while that's happening, what I'm going to do is what I'm going to do right now, sorry, I think I just cut off my own audio. What I'm going to do right now while we wait is I'm going to upload the slides for my presentation directly into the Slack channel so that if you're following along, you can do some following along right on those slides. I would ask that you not try to move ahead too fast because I don't want you to get stuck. But just a quick reminder, here are the slides. They are now available in the Slack channel. And if you have questions, just please reach out to Rob Kidd or UberGeekGirl, which is Jessica DeVita here in the Slack team. And I'll just give one more minute for folks to get the IP address, and then we'll get moving here. All right, it sounds like we are good to go. And let's see, hopefully on my screen or on the screen that I'm sharing with you right now, you see a slide that on the top says login to Remote Workstation. And then on the left side of my screen, you see a thing that says SSH chef at 54.69.219.3. Could someone in the Slack channel just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? Like, yes, that's what you see, I hope. You should see both a slide and a shell that's over here getting ready to SSH in. All right, thank you, Drew, for letting me know that that's the case. Okay, so if you're going to participate along with these labs, here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is actually SSH into our remote workstation. And so in order to do so, I'm just going to move directly over to the shell. I'm not going to advance the slides right now. You'll see just my shell, but you can follow along. So I will SSH chef at the IP address that I got either from Jessica or from Rob. You don't know who I got it from. I'm going to keep that a secret. But once you've typed that in, and this maybe is PuTTY if you're on Windows, or just directly in a terminal if you're on Mac or on an Ubuntu system, I'm going to hit Enter. And then it's going to ask me to verify the authenticity of the host. Now, this is a DevOps meetup, and so I know that everyone here knows the proper way to verify the authenticity of the host. And of course, it's super easy. You type in the letters YES, and then you hit Enter. Right. So we've now verified the authenticity of the host, and it's going to ask us for a password. The password that you'll use is the same as the username. So it's going to be chef, CHEF, all in lowercase. So I'm going to type that in here on mine, and then hit Enter. All right, now once we've logged in, I want to just say a couple of things about these workstations that we've given you for tonight's presentation. For tonight's, I'm also going to turn off my notifications here for tonight's meetup. So first things first, this is a talk about InSpec. So maybe we'll ask the system, which InSpec? Does InSpec exist on these machines? So sure enough, InSpec is installed on these machines. Let's just check out which version is available. InSpec space version. And this will tell us that we have a version of InSpec that's on here. It's 1.11.0, but oh my goodness, we're out of date. We don't have the latest version of InSpec available here. This is a nice little thing that InSpec, the command line tool, will do for you. It'll tell you if you're out of date or not. We're not going to worry about updating them. This version will work completely fine for the labs that we have to do tonight and for my introduction to InSpec for you. Now, what is InSpec? InSpec, as I mentioned, is compliance as code. So it really is it's a tool, it's a language, it's a framework for how do you manage the compliance of your infrastructure. How do you test the compliance of your infrastructure and so forth? And so we'll see exactly how that works. Now, again, one of the things that we've done on this workstation is we've installed InSpec. Another thing that we've done on this workstation is we've allowed you to SSH in with a simple username and password. Now, it should be clearly stated that this is a completely ridiculous, stupid thing for anyone to do. You should not be able to SSH into a server or any station or any workstation or any computer with a simple username and password. Of course, you should use keys to get better control over who has access to your servers. Of course, this is a learning lab. This is a learning environment. So, you know, it's kind of fine. YOLO, dog. Anyhow, so I've allowed you access via username and password. InSpec is installed here. And then, of course, chef is also installed here. And we can check the version of chef by running this command, chef space -- version. And then there we go. It's going to show us that Chef Client version 12.18.31 is installed here. Delivery is installed on this, and Kitchen. Those are all part of the Chef development kit. Now I'm just going to switch over to my slides here for a second and get us caught up to where we need to be. And in the meantime, I'll just remind you that if you have questions, just ping us in the Slack channel. And Rob or Jessica will be able to help out. So we SSH'd into our machine so far. We verified the authenticity of the host. Super easy to do. Type YES and hit Enter. We then provided the password. So the username and the password for these machines are both chef. So we give the password of chef. Now the next most important thing that I'd like you to do. I ask that you would touch a name or touch a file on this system that is your first name and last name. Let me just demonstrate that for you. I'm going to type in this command, touch, and then I'm going to type in my first name, Nathen Harvey. And so I'd like you to do the same. Of course, I don't want you to type in Nathen Harvey. I want you to type in your first name and your last name, and then hit enter. And then if you do an ls, what you're going to see is that there is now a file there that has the same name that you just touched. So it has your first name and last name. Now, this is important because we want to make sure that somehow neither Rob nor Jessica made a copy-paste error and gave you someone else's machine as well. So really the thing that I think is more important for you to do right now is type this command, sleep 60 ampersand ampersand ls. What this is going to do is tell your system to sleep for 60 seconds and then list the files again. This way, we'll have a little bit better understanding that we are the only one, or that you are the only one on your machine. Meanwhile, while that runs in the background, it's going to take, about a minute to execute. I'm just going to switch back to the slides. So we're going to run this, and certainly after those 60 seconds, you should only see your name. We did this which InSpec. We saw that InSpec was in fact installed at a version 1.11.0. We didn't run which chef, but of course you could run it and it would tell you this. It's installed under opt chef DK. So chef DK, what is that chef development kit? Chef DK is the chef development kit, and it includes all of the tools that we think are really the best practices for how you manage your chef recipes. Maybe you're brand new to Chef. So Chef is a tool for infrastructure automation. With a tool like Chef, we get to have a lot of fun. So we wrote a tool called Chef. In order to describe what your infrastructure should look like, you write recipes. You take those recipes, you put them into cookbooks. Super fun, super easy to do in terms of describing your infrastructure as code. Now, the Chef Development Kit takes the best tools from the Chef ecosystem and brings them all together into one toolkit. And this is really the toolkit that you're going to use as you start to develop your own chef policies, as you write recipes, as you test those recipes following a test-driven approach to writing that code, and so forth. So it includes things for testing. Food Critic and Cook Style are both sort of static analysis tools. They're going to look at your Ruby code that you've written or the chef code that you've written and tell you, are you following sort of the best practices in terms of the way that the code is written and so forth within the community. Now, ChefSpec is a unit testing tool, and then there's some deeper integration testing. Test Kitchen, which allows us to set up a nice test harness for our policies and then execute those policies and tests. And then finally, InSpec, which we're looking at tonight, which is going to verify our automation results and ensure compliance. Now, in the meantime, it took me more than 60 seconds to walk you through that slide. So in fact, I slept for a minute, I listed my files, and I see that there is no other name on this in my home directory. So I'm feeling pretty confident that I'm the only one in here. Of course, my confidence should not be super great because I did just live stream the IP address, the username, and the password for this machine. I would ask that you please leave my machine alone. Let me get through the presentation without disrupting it. Okay, so again, if you're just tuning into the live stream, please do join dctechslack.com and join us over in the DevOps DC meetup group or channel there. All right, so I want to talk about continuous compliance. How can we utilize Chef Automate and InSpec profiles together to ensure that your infrastructure not only is compliant with whatever controls you have to follow, but also stays compliant with all of the code that you have to follow, or all of the controls and such that you have to follow. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and open up this URL. And I'm sure Jessica or Rob will happily paste this URL into the Slack channel for us. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up myself as well. Let's just get a browser over here. And we're going to this URL. It's https://dcmeetup-compliance-workshop.chefdemo.net. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter there, and we're going to see a couple of things. The first thing we're going to see, oh my gosh, this connection is not private. You see, as it turns out, that for this demo environment that we have set up, we're using a self-signed certificate, which means that you probably shouldn't ever go here because you might be subject to some man-in-the-middle attacks or other not super great things. But you can trust me, it's totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and click Advanced, and then I'm going to proceed. And of course, I'm using the Chrome web browser here. So you may need to follow some slightly different steps depending upon which browser you're using. All right. Well, this brings me to a Chef Automate screen, which asks me to sign in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And in order to stick with our super secure policies that we've already clearly laid out for you here tonight, I'm going to log in with the username of Chef. And the password is, yes, that's right. You guessed it. The password is also Chef. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in there. Now, while that's just rendering that page, I want to tell you a little bit about Chef Automate. First, I'm not going to remember. I'm not going to add that to my password manager. Chef Automate is the tool that gives you sort of insight and visibility into what's happening within your infrastructure. So one of the things that we'll see here is that there's a converged status, and I can see that 52 nodes have successfully checked in to this Chef server. Let's go ahead and browse over here to the nodes view and see what's going on. So when Rob or Jessica gave you your IP address, they gave you not only an IP address, but also the name of your server. So in fact, I don't remember off the top of my head which name Jessica gave me. So I have to go figure that out really quickly. I'll be just a second while I do so. Let's see, I have the Compliance Workstation 5 of Diamonds. So what you'll see here is that each of the workstations or the nodes that you're logged into are named after playing cards. So mine is the 5 of Diamonds, and I can view it here. So I was logged into the Chef Automate server. I clicked on the nodes view. I can scroll down here and see information about each one of the nodes that have checked in with this one. So I'm going to look at the 5 of Diamonds, because that's the card that Jessica gave me in addition to an IP address. And as I click on this, I'm going to see a bunch of different things. So the first thing I can see is some details about my node. It's called the 5 of Diamonds and so forth. Its converged status, its run progress was 100%. Its run duration looks like it was pretty short, less than a minute or so. But it's been a while since this node has checked in. The resources that are configured on this node, well, no resources yet. And we're going to change that here in just a minute. But having no resources means there's no real policy for this. In fact, if I look at the run list is a collection of recipes that would be executed against this node to ensure it's following it the right policy. There's nothing in the run list. And I could click over here to attributes. Now, this is interesting. There are actually over 4,000 attributes that I already know about this particular system. So I can come to this attributes section and browse through or click through and figure out, like, here's a good question. How many CPUs do I have on this particular machine? What's the model name of the CPU, and so forth. So you'll see here that there's lots and lots of details that the Chef Automate server already knows about your machine. All right, I'm going to pause there and see. Oh, I see. Uber Geek Girl mentions that she maybe didn't give out the name, so you don't know which machine to look at to make sure that you have yours. I'll just pause there. I'll pull up the slides to get us caught up to where we are in terms of the live demo, and we'll move on from there. All right, so just to recap what we've done, and again, these are all in the slides. We logged into that Chef Automate server using the username and password both of Chef. We clicked on the nodes view so that we could go in and check out our node. The slides have me looking at an orange 3 of hearts. Of course, in mine, I'm using the 5 of diamonds. And then from there, we could browse and see that there are no resources currently assigned or updating on this particular node, no run list. But there's definitely lots and lots of attributes about this node. Now, another thing that we could check out while we're here is the compliance status. So when I look at this node, what controls have I applied to this node? How is it in or out of compliance with those controls? And you'll see that no controls have been applied yet to this node either. So we have this node that's in this state. It's currently connected to or talking to or sharing information with, however you like to say that, with Chef Automate. So Chef Automate has information and insight into this node, and we can get some nice visibility there. But we've not applied any policy, so we haven't changed and we aren't managing the configuration of this node with Chef yet, nor have we checked it for any compliance controls. All right. So we looked at, one of the things that you might have noticed is that the node is using Chef Solo. And Chef Solo really is, well, I'll talk about Chef Solo in just a second. Just to recap on Chef Automate, we get a nice aggregate status of our infrastructure. One of the things that I didn't really point out back here on the node view, if we look at these nodes, we can actually see a trend graph that shows how many nodes have checked in, what's their converged status over time. And you can see here that about 52 nodes, in fact, 42 and 10, checked in between 5 o'clock and 5:30. And this was as we were setting up the demo environment. So you can get that nice aggregate status on what's going on. You can filter and search on things. And then, of course, drill into the details of any specific node. Now, I mentioned that it uses Chef Solo. When we think about Chef, there are a couple of ways that Chef can run. One is through Chef Solo, and another is through Chef Client. Well, Chef Solo works without relying on a Chef server to provide the configuration policies, like the cookbooks and the environments and so forth. You can read about it there on our docs site. But what this means is that the policies that are being applied to this node do not have to exist on the Chef server. The Chef Solo would expect those policies to live locally. So the policies might live locally, or they might actually be available at some URL in a tar.gz format that can be downloaded. There's also, for those of you that are familiar with Chef, the node object in a Chef Solo run is actually stored as a local JSON file, as is the attribute data. It does not pull any data from the Chef server. However, as we've seen here, it can be configured to send data back to Chef Automate. So we can actually get details about our nodes within the Chef Automate visibility component, like we can look at the data about our node without actually pulling any data off of that Chef server. Now, in addition to Chef Solo, there's another thing where we can run our Chef client in local mode. So running Chef client in local mode is essentially the same as using Chef Solo. It's not going to pull anything off of the Chef Automate server, but it can be configured to push data back up to the Automate server. And that's exactly the scenario that we have here. Okay, hopefully by now you've had a chance to poke around in Chef Automate, look at your node, see what's going on there. What I'd like to do is go ahead and talk about how do we get a compliance profile running against our particular node. So I'm going to just move back over to the shell here that I have. And the first command that I'm going to ask you to do is just cd to tilde. And you probably were there already. It's just important that we start in the same place that we start in the home directory. And then what I'd like you to do is actually run this command. It's sudo run_chef. Now, I just want to point out that this command, run_chef, this is a convenience script that we've added to these machines. The command that you might otherwise run is a little bit longer, but this way we have a smaller chance of typos as we type this. So I'm going to go ahead and run that, and then I'm going to find out that run chef doesn't actually exist there. So isn't that interesting? So if I do which run chef, of course, it's not going to find it. So that's, but it is there. All right, so you might need to do sudo /user local bin run_chef. One or the other of these commands should work. So maybe if we could, Jessica, make sure that that gets posted, that sudo command gets posted into the Slack. That would be helpful for all concerned. I'll just put it back up here on my shell as well, so you can see it at the bottom there. So we also just learned another terrible, terrible, terrible thing that we've done with these nodes that we've given to you. We've given you passwordless sudo access. You basically own these boxes right now. Please, for my benefit, just use them for the things that we're walking you through tonight. All right, well, we ran Chef, and of course, it showed us that it has no run list. It loaded up cookbooks, but node 5 of diamonds has an empty run list, and so at the end of that, 0 of 0 resources were updated, which makes perfect sense, I suppose. If I come back over here to my node view in Chef Automate and actually refresh this page, I should see here that now my chart shows me that I've had 3 successful nodes check in. And then again, if I drill into my 5 of diamonds, we can see that it checked in a minute ago. In fact, you might have noticed as I scrolled by there very quickly that there are some nodes here, many nodes here, that have checked in 3 hours or more ago. But there are a number, like the 5 of clubs, the 5 of diamonds, that have checked in just a minute ago, just recently. And so I can come in here and see that, sure enough, it's checked in twice. Again, total resources, there were none. So this shows that it's now working, and it continues to work directly with our Chef server. OK, so once that's done, I'd like to run one more command here. So we're going to run that same sudo user local bin run chef command. But this time, we're going to pass one more argument to that command. And it's going to look just like this. Recipe audit : default. And what this is going to do, and I'll let Jessica or Rob can post that command into the Slack channel for me. And of course, it looks like somebody has already said, just fix your path. Like, that's super easier than typing out that whole path, which is totally true. You can totally do that. In any case, recipe audit default says, let's run the default recipe out of the audit cookbook. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm not even going to talk about what it does. We'll just see what happens here. So a bunch of stuff is going to scroll by. Some of that content or that stuff that scrolled by was in green. Some of it is in white. But this is the interesting thing here. The Chef client is finished, and 1 of 2 resources were updated this time. Let's figure out what those 2 resources are and what's going on. So I'm going to move back over to my node view. And I'm still on my node, the 5 of diamonds. I'm just going to refresh this page and see what's up with this 5 of diamonds. First, it has completed 2 resources were executed. First resource was a Chef gem. Its action was to install, and it was installed. So there was a successful change to that resource. And then that resource must be defined twice in my run list, because I see it listed here as the Chef gem. Its name was InSpec, and its action was installed. This time we have a blue check mark instead of a green check mark. The blue check mark says it was unchanged. So you see the way that Chef works, when the Chef client executes a recipe, it will make sure that it sort of follows what I call a test and repair model. So somewhere in our recipes, we have a policy that says the gem InSpec must be installed. The first time the client saw that, it installed the gem. The second time it installed that, it said, or it's encountered that, I should say, it said, oh, that gem is already installed. I don't need to do anything. So this is good. But if I come over here to the compliance status, I see my node is no longer compliant. There are too many critical and major scored tests failed during the scan. And in fact, I can see that there's actually 1 control that's now been applied. That control is this SSH version 2, so an SSH configuration control. And I can click on the details here and see, like, what's going on. Well, I have a control that says the SSH configuration protocol should compare to 2. And so what does that actually look like? If I drill into that or click on that, let's see. Right, so this is the control that's failing. I have this SSH protocol should be set to 2. Let's figure out what's actually happening on our server. So clicking through some slides here just to get us caught up. We saw the compliance status. We saw that SSH version 2 is what's failing. It should compare to 2. And if we click this additional information link here, you'll see the full control. Now, this code that's displayed here is actually InSpec code that's showing up right here in my browser. And this is the control that was executed. Now, you've probably never seen any InSpec before, but just by looking at this code, I hope that you're able to understand exactly what's happening here. So we have this control. It has some level of impact, and that impact is what level of criticality, or what is our score that we have for that control. It has a title and description, and then finally a test. Describe the SSHD config. Its protocols should compare to 2. Now that CMP operator, that's really should equal if it's should equal 2. But we don't care if it's to the string or to the integer. Either one will compare, or CMP to 2. All right, so this is the control that's failing in our machine. And we're going to go ahead and, first, we're going to review the setup, see how all of this ties together. Then we'll go ahead and remediate that control and see it fixed in our thing. All right, so back over here, I'm going to cd to my home directory. So my PWD, or my present working directory, is home/chef. And when I ls this directory, again, you'll see your name there, hopefully, but you'll also see a round of cookbooks. So let's just ls the cookbooks directory. And there you'll see that we have 2 cookbooks that are stored locally here, the audit cookbook and the compat resource cookbook. So the audit cookbook is responsible for installing InSpec. It runs InSpec profiles, and then it can be configured to report those results back to Chef Automate or to a Chef compliance server. In this case, it's reporting the results back to Chef Automate and the visibility component therein. The compat resource cookbook is really something that allows for some backward compatibility. It's a dependency of the audit cookbook, so we have to have that one installed locally as well. Now, also in our home directory is this file config.json. And if you cat or open up in a text editor the config.json, we don't need to make any changes to it here. But there's a couple of things that you'll see here. These attributes are set up for the audit cookbook. And the first thing it does is it sets up this collector. The collector says, hey, take the data that we gather and send it back to Chef Visibility, which is a component within Chef Automate. Here's the InSpec version that we'd like to execute. And then it says there are profiles that you should execute. So there's a profile named SSH right here in my home directory. You may have seen that as we listed back here. There's a profiles directory. So what you can do from within your home directory is you can type in this command, tree profiles, and it will show you here's the profile for SSH. The profiles directory has an SSH directory within that. There's an inspec.yaml within that that describes what this control is. And then within that, there's a controls ssh.rb. And so if we cat profiles ssh controls ssh.rb, we'll see that exact control that we saw in the Chef Automate web interface. We'll see that exact control right here. Now, a nice thing about InSpec is that I can actually run InSpec profiles locally. So I could type in this command, inspec exec, exec, I have to spell it correctly, of course, and I want to inspec exec the SSH profile. And so if I run that right here, what it's going to do is test the local system. Is SSH configuration set up so that it only uses protocol 2? And we'll see here that no, in fact, it's not. So I can run this locally on my own machine. I can also, if I wanted to, I could actually run it against a remote machine as well. And you can do that by running it directly against my machine if you like. Let me show you the command. I'm going to run inspec exec. Same thing here. I'm going to do profiles SSH. But this time what I'm going to do is specify a target, or a -t. And for my target, I want to specify an SSH target. So I'm going to type in SSH://. And this you can type right along with me. 54.69.219.3. And then I need to pass to this some credentials so that it can log into that remote host. I'll say user equals chef and -- password equals chef, and I'll go ahead and execute that. And what this is going to do, this will actually execute across SSH to execute that local profile. Now, I'm going to give you a test for those of you that are here in the session and are actually playing along. What I need to do, oh, not that screen, let me get to the right screen here. Oh, I know how I can do this. This is super easy. There, I think you can no longer see, yeah, you can no longer see my, my shell. So I'm just going to make a quick change here. Give me one quick second here. All right, I would like you to execute that SSH against my machine again. And I'd like you to tell me what is the current value for my SSH protocol. And once you figure out what the current value for my SSH protocol is, it would be awesome if the first person to put it into the DevOps DC meetup, I'll send you an InSpec t-shirt. How about that? And sorry if you're watching the stream, I have to have a slight delay because there's a 10-second delay between what I say live and what shows up on the stream. So my question is, what is my machine's current SSH protocol? Yes. All right. Don has the answer. My current SSH protocol is hello DC. And that is not going to work well for anyone, especially me. So Don, I will DM you, or you can DM me in that Slack. Get me your address and your t-shirt size, and I will send you an InSpec t-shirt for being awesome and for participating along with us tonight. All right, so now I'm going to just bring my my control back over here, and you can see that sure enough, I changed the value of this file to hello DC for the protocol. But of course, that's not what it was before. Before, it looked like this. Let's see, I'm just going to set it properly. Before, it looked exactly like that. So now, again, if I run my control again, or if you run your control again, you'll see, in fact, that I'm still failing. Now, what will we do next? What I'd like to do is go ahead and fix this. We need to remediate the failing control, rerun the audit cookbook, and then verify that we're compliant within Automate. Now, if we had more time, what I would do is do this the right way. I would write a chef policy or a chef cookbook to remediate this control. But since we're running pretty short on time, we're not going to do that. We're just going to manually update our SSH configuration. We'll then rerun our controls and see whether or not we end up compliant. Now, of course, you have all of the slides, so you can actually see in the slides how I walk through and actually build out this cookbook and write a chef recipe such that it will address those controls. All right, so we're going to cheat. We're going to remediate our SSH control manually. Why would you ever do it this way? I'm not really certain, but that's what we're going to do tonight, primarily for the sake of time. So what you need to do on your machine is edit the etc SSH SSHD config file. You'll see that it has a protocol that is currently commented out. So you need to remove that commented out line and replace it with protocol 2. Of course, you don't need to actually remove this line and retype it. You can simply remove that hash mark at the beginning of the file. Let's go ahead and have me do that while you watch. So I'll just sudo vim, because that's the editor of my choice, etc ssh sshd underscore config. And then, of course, I was here before, so it drops me right there. I'm just going to change the protocol to 2, and I will write and quit that file. I can then rerun my InSpec control, and you can, of course, run yours against me if you like. But now, as I rerun that InSpec control locally, I'm going to see, sure enough, I am now compliant with that control. So as our final step here in this process to fully get this remediated, I'm just going to rerun the run chef with the recipe audit default. So this is going to go ahead and run. Great, so that's completed. I'm now going to switch back over to my Chef Automate server. Go back to my nodes. Oh, I could have just refreshed that page, I suppose. But now I can see here that, hey, we're up to 8 people that are successfully converging their nodes. It's great. Thank you all for participating as we've gone through this. I'm going to go over here to the 5 of diamonds, which was mine, which just checked in a couple of seconds ago. Sure enough, its run or converge status is good. And if I come over to the compliance status, yay, I am compliant now, and I am following the control that has been laid out for me. So to kind of close things out as we get on, as we're kind of running low on time here, let me first skip a bunch of slides that's all about how we might fix this with a cookbook. And then I'm just going to jump down here to some further resources. So InSpec is a really nice language that allows you to capture your compliances code, to take that code and execute it wherever makes sense for you. You can put that code directly into your pipelines and start managing and testing for compliance as you're writing out your infrastructure code. You can use InSpec as a nice integration language, integration framework for integration testing when it comes time to writing your cookbooks and recipes and other policies in a test-driven fashion. Now, this was a quick intro to InSpec. We have 40 minutes to get you through. So what are some other places you can go for help? First, I would check out and highly recommend the InSpec website. You'll find it at inspec.io. There's great tutorials and documentation there. Second, join the Chef community Slack if that's of interest to you. There's an InSpec channel there. So you can sign up for that Slack because we all need another Slack at community-slack.chef.io. And then we also have a mailing list at discourse.chef.io with an InSpec category. You can even find some compliance profiles on the supermarket. So I'm just going to browse over there really quickly. So if you are familiar or not with the supermarket, here it is. The supermarket is a place where the chef community shares a bunch of tooling. So on the supermarket, of course, you can find tons and tons of cookbooks, 3,000 cookbooks or so. But in this tools and plugins section, you'll find, well, tools and plugins, tools like knife plugins and Ojai plugins and so forth. But you'll also find here compliance profiles. And you'll see that there are a bunch of compliance profiles that have been listed here, and you can use those compliance profiles for your own use cases. There's a Chef client hardening, there's a CIS Docker benchmark, an Apache baseline, a Linux baseline, an SSH baseline, MySQL, and so forth. So I definitely recommend that you check some of those out. And then InSpec itself is an open source project. You can find it and contribute to it at github.com/chef/InSpec, which you can read probably better than I can say. And in fact, I see that Jessica just posted a link there. All right, so that I can continue to get paid, I have to mention this awesome conference that I would love to see you all come to, and that is ChefConf, which is being held in May down in Austin. We've got 4 great days of stuff lined up, from training workshops. So if you have some training budget that you're interested in spending this year, come to ChefConf on that training budget. Lots of great classes that will get you hands-on, good classes even for managers about how to manage DevOps teams and so forth. So check all of that out at chefconf.com. Of course, registration is open now. Registration includes early bird tickets. That price goes up at the end of this month, so register now. All right, that is the quick 40-minute intro and hopefully some hands-on with InSpec for you. Now, if only I can find the right browser window, I will. It's not that one. Definitely not that one. I will. Aha. There we are. I will stop sharing my screen, turn back on my video, and say thank you all for tuning in to tonight's DevOps DC. We do have a little bit of extra time, so what I'm going to do is say if you're in the Slack channel, I'm going to post a URL to this Hangout that we are currently in. And I'm going to say, hey, if you want to chat with folks, come on into this Hangout. We can have some live discussion. Before I do that, though, I am going to stop our broadcast because I want you to be able to meet one another, but we don't necessarily need